Hey everybody, welcome back to Movie Master, where we rank, review, trailer react, and talk news about movies, TV shows, and sometimes video games. Now, I know this is a long overdue video of me finally ranking all 11 live-action and animated Spider-Man movies from worst to best. Now, this does not indeed count the Nicholas Hammond ones. I do not count those. None of the live-action TV shows, obviously none of the cartoons will be counted on this list. This will only be the 11 movies that have been made from 2002 to now in the Spider-Man franchise. So, remember, this is going to be spoilers for No Way Home if you have not seen it. And thank God now it's much more better time to upload it, considering now everyone must likely know the big spoiler about No Way Home. And I'm just very excited to get into this video. And I'm making it 20 years after Spider-Man 2002's release. So this year it's now been 20 years since the original Spider-Man 2002, directed by Sam Raimi, was released this year. Along with it being 10 years since The Amazing Spider-Man 1, released in 2012. So we are now hitting the 20 and 10 year mark of beginnings of Spider-Man franchises. 2017's Homecoming won't get a 10-year anniversary till quite later on in my lifetime, or in the world time. But nonetheless, tell me what you guys think in the comments below of this ranking, and nonetheless, let's get on with it. And if you guys want to check out reviews I've done for all the movies by themselves, you can check out a bunch of videos that I'll be leaving links in the description below. There'll be a bunch of videos of me reviewing every Spider-Man movie from 2002's one to now. Now, nonetheless, with that all out of the way, let's get on with the video. So, let's get it all the way down to number 11. At the bottom is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, released in 2014. This movie, I've already talked about it many times, about many reasons why I believe this movie never worked. Now, at first, this movie had a roughish start from the start. The film was originally meant to focus on Electro and Spider-Man as the main characters, and it was meant to be more like a very focused film on their characters and develop Peter's character arc. And obviously some major changes went under. They asked him to alter the suit, not a big one, but a good one for a lot of fans. They asked him to heavily change the tone to a more lighter direction to make him more whimsical and happy, similar to the Raimi films. They asked him to change up how he swung in the web swinging, how he dressed, how everything looked. Basically, they told him to change the entire direction. Then they brought on Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, who wrote Star Trek Into Darkness in the first two Transformers films. And, well, when they brought them on, they told them to set up a bunch of plot lines for future films. What can I say? This movie's overstuffed. It has way too many plot lines competing, because you got the Peter Parker parents plotline that has no need to be in here, but if it should have been in here, it should have been reduced down to one thing. Or then you got the whole Deadly Osborn blood thing that was really annoying. Then you got Gwen Stacy and Peter having relationship problems, because, well, we definitely didn't need more of that, did we? Now, there are only about a few good things I've talked about. When I've talked about this movie, often I've only listed one good thing, is that the suit looks really cool. I think it matches up to levels of Spider-Man, well, it reaches up to levels of Spider-Man, Sam Raimi trilogy, and I'm a big Raimi fanboy, so making to beat that is a pretty hard task as me as a Raimi fan. And I think it was a really good suit. It had emotive eyes, the webbing was more raised. The only issue is I wish there was a more realistic transition from realistic like it was made by a teenager to one that's made by an advanced amount of teams. Nonetheless, the movie is very terrible. It's clunkered. It's really no fun. When you see Spider-Man on screen, you pretty much just get bored. I go, oh, there's Spider-Man. Oh well, like, you don't really feel hopeful. I like the Hans Zimmerman theme, the main part theme where he does the Spider-Man theme. I do miss the horns, the horn part, and on all the other instruments that went into James Horner's one. And I don't really like the very heavy dubstep where they went. I like the dubstep electro theme, but they increased it to 11. They also added lyrics into his theme song for some reason. And overall, it was cluttered. It plotted in a death for no reason. Rhino was a villain. And yeah, all of this was just a messy movie. And if they listened to Kevin Feige's facts, like reducing Rhino's role, making him less comedic and more serious, making Green Goblin be more, just changing up some things, it would have been a better movie. But unfortunately, it sits right here at number 11. And number 10 is Spider-Man 3. This movie is, yeah, it's not one of the best movies, but this movie gets more hate than it deserves. Now, a lot of people are going to be in the comments screaming, "Oh, why did you put this movie up here? This movie's garbage." Well, it's not as bad as everyone says. If you've checked out my last video, I'm completely contradicting what I said in that last one, but I completely ripped apart this movie, said it was terrible. I was just letting my inner fanboy and other people's opinions sway me. I'm now giving my true blue opinion, the opinion I've had for probably like the past 2 years since 2020. That is, it's a good movie. You cannot have a bad time watching this. It's a decent movie. I don't get why people hate it so much. Yes, I get why you can dislike it. There are 3 villains, the big obvious part. Sandman is the only villain out of the 3 that even gets that much development out of his character. Venom is pretty much shoehorned into the film and pretty much is just shoehorned in for no reason, shoved in there out of nowhere. Eddie's Brock character makes more solidity in the script just as a character, not Venom. And then while Green Goblin, well, that should have been, yeah. There was going to be a major arc for them, both Sandman and New Goblin, where we would have seen them intertwining each other, but when they forced Venom into the film, Avi Arad convinced the directors to force Venom into the film, and, well, Sam Raimi wasn't really interested, but they forced his hand, and he ended up in the film, and, well, we all know how that went. Overall, besides that, the plots are over-cluttered. We got more relationship issues between Peter and MJ, not showing the fans that they are not a good couple, and pretty much giving it a very, very terrible love triangle, and just overall, really, really not doing justice that the first 2 films have done, and really doing dirty and speaking silence for the Raimi and McGuire take on the characters. This ended up just killing off the franchise completely. Now, yes, a lot of people are wondering, yes, there were indeed plans for a sequel, but due to a lot of pressure from Sony, and due to the fact that director Sam Raimi couldn't make their date on time, and due to the fact that he just felt so pressured to want to make it better than Spider-Man 3 and the issues he had with trying to make one, he left the project. And pretty much all the other crew followed with him. Once he left, Tobey followed, and, well, pretty much there's really no point with making it without Tobey, so they cancelled Spider-Man 4 in 2010 and decided to go all in with a new reboot, taking James Vanderbilt, Steve Kloves, and Alan Sargent to help write a new script for an Untitled Spider-Man film that only had the Lizard attached as the main villain, with the Vulture now being with Vulture and Black Cat being now scrapped from the film and renaming it The Amazing Spider-Man. This movie, you can hate on it as much as you want, but I would say the one thing that makes it decent is it has that vibe. Now, I've told a lot of people this that I interact with. This movie has the vibe, man. When you watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2, unlike The Amazing Spider-Man 1, you don't feel the Mark Webb vibe. You don't feel that anywhere here. Anywhere. You don't feel like it vibes. You don't feel like the music. The music vibes Hans Zimmerman, clearly it does. But you can't feel the passion Mark Webb put into it. You don't feel anything of the passion that he put into it. All his scenes he filmed were replaced with baseless scenes that don't really improve upon a great actor, Andrew Garfield. You don't feel the heart. You don't feel anything. The only time I really felt sad was when Gwen Stacy died. And again, that felt forced, because then by the end of the movie, he's the happiest a bug can be. And then boom, he's back to healthy. There's even a rewrite I'm doing on The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that will have a lot of stuff cut out. I have talked that I am indeed doing that rewrite. But nonetheless, this is just what really annoyed me with that one. And Spider-Man 3, it has the heart. It has that music. Yes, Danny Elfman didn't do the music, but Christopher Young does a great music. He takes what Elfman does and enhances it. His music is amazing. And it takes what Elfman did and expands upon it. It still has that Elfman music with a Christopher Young taste in it, and it makes it even more brilliant. It still has McGuire, it still has Dunst, it still has Franco, it still has even Willem Dafoe, it still has J.K. Simmons, Elizabeth Banks, Bill Nunn. It still has all these actors. It has Sam Raimi directing it, it has Alan Sargent co-writing it, has Sam Raimi writing it and directing it. It has nearly everything that made the first 3 movies so great. And it still has that vibe, and that's why I love it a lot. It may have not led up to par of the previous 2 films, but I still thought it was a good movie. And number 9 is Venom. Venom 2018, I've seen the movie, it's actually quite good. I'd say the story is very unique. It feels weird not having Spider-Man in it though, but you kind of get used to that. But as a person who's watched a lot of Spider-Man cartoons, was Venom and the first Spider-Man 3 film, the Spider-Man 3 movie, and Spectacular Spider-Man, Ultimate, and a lot of other cartoons featuring Venom's character, Spider-Man's a pretty essential part of his character. And seeing him not appear is a bit weird for me. But nonetheless, he doesn't, but it feels a bit weird. But yeah, overall, one issue is, it feels like it's jumping tones all over the place. It doesn't feel consistent with each other. Like, you can have a good time watching this. The action and comedy land its bits. It lands its comedy. But it clearly just feels like, yeah, it just feels like the tone jumps all over the place. The trailers made it like an action-packed thriller movie. And they jump around. They go from a thrilling horror type of movie to a comedy movie to an action-packed movie to a family-friendly movie. It jumps all over the place and it doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know which one it wants to be. Every movie before it, other movies like that, have all had a set tone. Like, for example, the MCU, a big combination of movies, has always set a lighthearted tone, yet a darkened tone at the same point. It's a lighthearted tone, yet a bit of dark tone in there, and then a realistic tone to keep it in. Like these Spider-Man films. Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, even though 3 darkened the tone a bit, all 3 films in the Sam Raimi trilogy had a happy and lighthearted tone, but a touch of horror in it to make it realistic, and was still dark and horror-like, like the horror movies Raimi came from, but had that happy and campy, the charming campy, and the whimsicalness and the comic-y feel that those comics had to make it feel like it was real life, grounded in real life, yet comic, and shows that movies could have their comic identity, yet still be set in a real world. And I think that's what made it so great. All three Raimi films follow this. Amazing Spider-Man 1 establishes a dark, gritty tone with a bit of humor in it. It has a dark, gritty, very much realistic tone while it's trying to be realistic with a bit of humor in it. And it kind of makes it a much more realistic viewpoint. And the second movie kind of jumps the gun with it and changes the entire tone and puts kind of darkness in the background and realisticness and pretty much knocks those off to the side and takes away gritty and makes it whimsical, lighthearted, and heroic and everything else. But and then when you take in the Homecoming, those are comedy, high school comedy movies, and Far From Home and No Way Home, those are comedical action movies. Far From Home's a rom-com, and the third one, No Way Home's a comedy action movie with adventure in it. This movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It wants to be an adventure, it wants to be an action, it wants to be a comedy, it wants to be all sorts of things, but it doesn't know what it wants to be. And overall, that's what weakens the experience a lot. And the fake deaths they often bring in the movie is really annoying. It's very annoying, but I do think they set up well for sequels, though. They did do very well for that movie. But yeah, I've seen it. It's an alright movie. I'd say you can have a good time watching it. The comedy's funny. You can have a good time watching it. The tone's very inconsistent, though. But yeah, that's what throws you off a bit. But nonetheless, it's a good start to a new cinematic universe. Number 8 is Far From Home. Now, this movie has been praised all around the world for how great it is. And honestly, I never got the appeal. I saw it, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was a masterpiece. And I've already mentioned before, that Movie Flam has indeed made a video talking about how great the movie is. And as a fan of his, I'm a big fan of his. I support all of it. I think he has great opinions. When it comes to Harry Potter, he understands that world. He understands Star Wars. He understands things. He understands DC in the perspective. Spider-Man, Marvel, he understands it, but Spider-Man in specific, he has no understanding of his character. And I know I'm going off point here with this video, but yeah, in order for me to talk more about that, I will indeed be making a debate video about that, pointing out the bad points of his video, but I'm not trashing him in any way, but he's an example of a lot of people who were saying Far From Home was a masterpiece. It wasn't as great as a lot of people were saying. People were saying, oh, it's better than the OG Spider-Man movies, and as a fan of the OG ones, even The Amazing Spider-Man was better than Far From Home. Like, you can have a fun comedical time with it, and it's more funny than Amazing Spider-Man 1, it's better than Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's better than Spider-Man 3, it's better than Venom. But when the movies that came before it, it's not as good as Into Spider-Verse, not nearly as good as the first 2 Raimi films, nor really the Amazing Spider-Man 1 kind of hits around it or below it. And I like that it has a rom-com comedic tone, but it pushes too much on the Tony Stark element. I get that was to finish the Infinity Saga, because you started the Infinity Saga with Iron Man and you ended it with Iron Man. It was very poetic, but the way they were finishing the narrative affected the story they were trying to tell, and that was a real big effect. But I still think they finished off the Infinity Saga well. A lot of people think that Far From Home shouldn't have been the end game of the Infinity Saga, but it should have been, and it was a great way to end it. And overall, Far From Home is a good movie. You can have a good time during it. It's a great comedy and rom-com movie. It's a great rom-com high school movie. It's a great rom-com high school adventure vacation movie. And a good Spider-Man movie, but it's not a great one. And that's a good one, but not great. And number 7 is Venom Let There Be Carnage. I would say the things much here are much better. They are much more consistent with what they want to be. It's very much more comedic. I don't mind it, but it's very shocking seeing Venom go from a terrifying, more horror-themed like villain to a complete comedical character. I think Carnage looked cool. I think what they did with this character was very interesting. I think Woody Harrelson was a greatly casted actor. They really delved more into these characters and really opened into these characters' looks and how they were as characters. They really opened into this new world of this new corner of Spider-Man mythos. And yeah, well, obviously the post-credit scene was going to have major effects on future movies, but overall, this movie, I think, really did well when it came to this stuff. And I think it was well. I didn't really like the fact they killed off Carnage. And yeah, there are some other problems with the movie. It's a good movie, I'd say. You can have a fun time watching it. I do say it has improvements over the first one, although it does have drastic differences between the first and second due to the change of directors. But I do say you can have a good time watching it like the first one. And I do think it sets up well in other universes, and it does a lot of good stuff for that too. And Venom Let There Be Carnage is obviously quite a good movie. You can enjoy it and have fun with it. But nonetheless, moving on to number 6 is The Amazing Spider-Man 1 in 2012. A lot of people are going to question, hey, why'd you put it here? Well, to give a bit of backstory of what I was going to explain is that one day I asked my teacher is a good friend. I'm a very good friend of a teacher, and he's one of my teachers, and we both love Spider-Man a lot. And I wasn't going to trash his opinion. I'm not trashing his opinion. If he's watching this, please, I'm not trashing his opinion. We both saw No Way Home, and there was another student there who, a friend, who's years above me, because I think I'm like a junior. I'm a year 10 junior, and she was like she was like a year 13. She was a senior, and we'll call her Hood, or Hoodie, and we were all there, and well, while we were talking, me, my teacher, Hoodie, and me, we were all talking about it, and Hoodie brought up The Amazing Spider-Man, and that, well, she was watching TV, she had a massive big TV, she was watching it she was looking through stuff on Netflix, and found The Amazing Spider-Man, and she watched it, and got bored, and came back and watched it later, like I have done many times while watching movies from time to time, especially that one. And well, she said it was boring, and I could agree, it can be quite boring in bits, but in order for you to really appreciate this movie, you must watch the video High Top was made. I'm going to leave a description, link in the description down below, along with a bunch of other videos I have. I recommend you check it out. It's a really good video. I think it really understands the character of him. High Top Phones really breaks down that specific movie, and I really think he does well with that, and I think he's an amazing guy, and I think he's just really good with it. And the film's very fascinating. It's a very interesting movie, because I've had a very, very rocky relationship when it came to that movie. It came out 10 years ago when I was 5. I went to go see it in cinemas, and it was the first ever Spidey film I went to go see. My friend Caden also went to go see it. He didn't mind it. I was not really with it. I even have a poster of him on my wall in his original OG suit. I wanted a Toby one as a little kid, but my dad couldn't print. My dad had a friend that couldn't print that. But at the time, I thought that, man, Andrew sucks, and I never liked him because I was being a big fat Raimi fanboy and supporter. But now I get fascinated and go, but there was more to this. His role, the way he was acting in this movie was ahead of its time. I mean, just the acting, the performance he gave in this movie was ahead of its time for people who liked Spider-Man. In order for somebody to appreciate this movie, you had to do 3 things. One, the essential one, you have to forget about the last 3 movies. As big and as amazing, as great, as spectacular, as ultimate as the Raimi movies are to Spider-Man's character and legacy and arc overall, you have to forget them. You have to forget them like they didn't exist. This is a completely new thing with new characters, new tellings, a new origin. And if you watch Hutchupham's video, he'll pretty much be explaining what I'm just saying in a small segment for an entire video. There is so much potential this movie made with grabbing a great director, great actors and actresses, and clearly it's unfortunate because this franchise was only concocted, this movie, this entire series was only concocted to keep the rights to his character. And that really eggs me. It clearly shows that Sony has no care, like a lot of other companies, they have no care for their characters. All they care about is money. This movie banks off the success of its title's name, Spider-Man. Because when people thought of Spider-Man, they thought they meant the Raimi movie version. That's what people thought of as Spider-Man. When they think of Spider-Man, they sometimes think of the video games that were made about him, the movie ones and the non-movie ones. They think about Spider-Man, they think about the comics, the cartoon, the new animated series, the 90s cartoon, Unlimited, Spectacular Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon airing at the time. That's what they think. But, well, they bank off this title. They banked off the iconicness that the Raimi films left off. That's the thing. People forced them to try and do the way Raimi could. You can't do it. Sony even forced us with him in the sequel to make it like Raimi did. You can't. I like the new style. I like that they made him like a vigilante. Even as a kid, I liked the more mysterious, dark, realistic tone. It felt different. I liked the suit. I thought it was unique. It wasn't as iconic. It felt more realistic. It felt more different as a suit. I overall thought this was a unique installment and that there was a lot of good stuff cut. Like the origin story, there were many good parts, like the fact that there were many plot lines left open because the creators, when they took Mark Webb's amazing film, they shredded part pieces that needed to tie up plot holes. And well, they just left stuff dangling to try and continue it in another story. This movie had the potential to be an amazing one. It would have truly broken grounds as having great writing and really breaking down this new character, Spider-Man. And yeah, it wasn't fully realistic because he gets bit by a spider and he fights a lizard. How exactly can you make that realistic? It's pretty hard to ground a fictional character. I mean, Batman. Spider-Man, you can ground him. Just gotta do really a lot of grounding. And you can ground that character. It just takes a lot amount of it that you can ground his character in real life. But that's the thing. You can't ground the character in real life. It's always been a thing. No matter what, you can ground him in real life. That's his character. But that's the thing. It was ahead of its time, in my opinion, when it came to Peter's arc. And I think it would have set up an amazing set of arcs for the next few movies. I've even already done a rewrite on it. I'm very sloppy because I haven't really done that many rewrites. But overall, I think I did a really good job with it. I'm planning 2 more rewrites, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Transformers 4, and half planning The Amazing Spider-Man 3. I'm planning for those ones. And yeah, even the Transformers 5, I've got 4 rewrite videos planned down the head. But nonetheless, if you look at this movie and you watch that video, if you look at it from how it's made behind the scenes, you'll get really entrapped with how the vision was made. You'll get entrapped with that. And if I could ever interview Andrew Garfield, if I ever got to see him and interview him and got to meet him, I would ask him this question. What would you have liked to see that was cut from the film? What was their things? What was the vision that you would want to see? Would you ever want to see a web cut? The alternate cut of it. I want to see The Amazing Spider-Man 1 web cut. The original version of Mark Webb that's held in the archives of Sony with the completed, fully filmed. All it would need is finish-ups with CGI and full-up finish-ups and touch-ups of CGI cut together and finished and re-released. Apparently it would have been a 4-hour movie. I think obviously you had to cut it down, but maybe make it like 2.5 hours or 3 hours. Overall, people say there's no originality in it. I agree, there may have not been a amount of originality, but there was so much originality, but Sony stepped in and made it too familiar. They tried so hard to win over new fans. No, they tried so hard to win over old fans instead of getting new ones. Because if you earn over old fans, it's a good thing. If you earn over new fans, it's a more amazing. You get newer fans to, well, actually invest money in your project. Makes you want to make more money and sequels. And that's all companies care about, because it's what makes them turn their gears. And if you get new old fans into it, that's a good thing. But nonetheless, it sits where it does. And at number 5 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This movie, I really say, really did indeed it changed the way Spider-Man was in this character. It really reinvigorated interest personally for me, and I didn't mind the title. It really felt like it made sense. His homecoming, he came back home. It was his homecoming. I think there were no flaws with the script, in my opinion. It had its issues, but I really liked it. As a kid, back when I was 10, I'm now 14 and 15. When I was 10, I even have a poster over there. You can see over there, that homecoming poster right over there was indeed from when the film was getting prepped for release. I even have action figures that I bought prior to the film's release. I bought action figures, toys, a bunch of stuff to prep for the release of the most upcoming Spider-Man movie that was coming out at the time. And I think that, honestly, it did really well. It was like Black Panther. It felt like it fitted into the world of the MCU. It felt like it really dug into that world, and it really felt like it was a kid in a world of heroes. And that was just so awesome to see Spider-Man interact with his fellow brethren. And the funny thing is the fact that they actually did try to get both Tobey Maguire's Spidey and Andrew Garfield's on the big screen with the MCU. Because, well, as many of you know, there have been 3 big live-action actors to play Spider-Man: Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. Tobey Maguire started when it was one of the major factors in the big boom of the 2000s for superhero movies. And in Iron Man 1, there was indeed an extended version, or an alternate version of the post-credit scene from Iron Man, where he mentions mutants, specifically the 2000 X-Men movies by Bryan Singer, the movies from Tobey, and the Fantastic Four. And, well, they referenced Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and he referenced radioactive bug bites, and that was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So he would have likely made an appearance had they used that one, but they didn't, because, well, they wouldn't have had the rights to include him. Nonetheless, later on down the line, Sony did want to at first introduce Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man to the MCU by putting Oscorp Tower on the New York skyline of the MCU and Avengers, but that never happened due to concept designs and all that. After that, well, yeah, he was going to appear in Civil War, but obviously, well, a lot of his fans wanted him to reappear within the MCU, but that obviously never happened. And, well, yeah, obviously none of that even happened, and it pretty much just led down to where it ended, where it led down, and yeah, he obviously got rebooted, and everything happened. But this movie really changed up the perspective of what to do with Spider-Man in the MCU, how to introduce him, and I think they did really great. John Watts was a really great director. He really brought a unique vision, and the comedy vision, I think, was really well. They did it really well. The jokes were very funny and hilarious, and they're even more funny now. And I really think Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man. I don't even need to explain why, due to the amount of videos on the internet. He masters that nerdy, very nerdy, bullied exterior that Tobey Maguire presented. He presented that very cool, confident deepness under him, like Tobey and Andrew did as Peter, and he even showed that very confident, very strong-headed Peter Parker, and I think they really did that great with Homecoming. And Vulture's a cool villain. I think he was a really unique villain because he was just trying to do well for his family. He wasn't looking to destroy the world and destroy Spider-Man like previous villains. He wasn't looking to destroy Spider-Man but save his entire world with his one dream. He wasn't looking to kill Spider-Man and everyone he loves. He wasn't looking to do any of that. He wasn't looking to ruin Spider-Man's life or anything. He wasn't looking to change the world, to turn everyone into lizards, or electrify and kill Spider-Man. He wasn't trying to do that. He was just trying to help his family. That's all he wanted to do, and I think that was really unique they did that with his character. And overall, I really liked it. Coming in at number 4 is Spider-Man 2, released in 2004. I think this is a great movie. I think it really delves deep into the character. It's like Superman 2, the Donner Cut, but for Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2002 took heavy inspiration from Superman 1978, and Batman 1989. It took heavy inspiration from those 2 movies, and I really think it did well when it came to inspiration from those movies. And I think it really overall knew their vision, established a vision in the first movie, and the second movie took a lot of intakes from Superman 2, him wanting to deal with his powers, his issues he was having, the struggle he was having with how to deal with the powers he was being given, and the fact that, yeah, I think they just did really well when it came to that, and I think it really scored the landing. So overall, I think Spider-Man 2 was a really good film. It challenged these characters. It pushed these characters. It pushed Spider-Man to with great power comes great responsibility. In Spider-Man 1, he learned with great power comes great responsibility. But Spider-Man 2, he is tested by this. Can he keep the power? Can he know that with great power, can he use his great power to be very responsible with it? Or can he not, can he give in to his insecurities and give up? That's what this movie will ponder and ask. And that as well, I'm being a sequel to Sam Raimi's amazing vision. And it ends and makes him even more of a relatable character in the world. And I've always found that this movie was a great movie. Nonetheless, after this is Spider-Man 3, and I think Spider-Man 2, it was the greatest out of trilogy. Like The Dark Knight, it was the greatest out of its trilogy. With the first one already being good enough and great, but then the sequel just blew things out of the water. And the third one was a decent ending, but still disappointed a lot of people. But nonetheless, the movie sits here. I think it's an amazing film. It's written really well. It pushes the more characters to their different limits. It doesn't really need to tell the origin anymore, and it does that well. And then number 3 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It tells a unique story. I think I really love that about it. It tells us a story with Miles Morales instead of the norm Peter Parker that has been told in the past about, well, in the past movies from Spider-Man 2002 all the way to Homecoming, with Venom being the first ever movie to not be a Spider-Man centered movie installment in the franchise. This one was a Spider-Man installment, but had Miles as the main running guy, with Peter's being there, but mainly as side characters. This time, Peter took a backseat, Miles stepped in the front. And I think that was great. I think they really did that well. I really liked how they did that. I think that was an amazing way to do it. And the way they made them parallel so well, that Miles would end up losing his Uncle Aaron, and like how Peter lost his Uncle Ben. And we get to see this unique version of Miles. He's a beatbox guy. He's a unique take on the Miles character. And I like how this guy even influences the Miles Morales in the Spider-Man PS4 video game. He's one half of a great Miles. And I think he's a really good Miles. He's a really interesting hero. He really takes us to unique leagues and shows us how you want to be your own Spider-Man. Instead of staying in the shadow like the comics, and he steps out of his shadow and goes into his own way of Spider-Man, making his own shadow to be Spider-Man. Not stepping in front of Peter's, not staying in it, he breaks away from it and makes his own. He takes a leap of faith. And I think the Peter Parker by Jake Johnson is another phenomenal character. He's really a broken character. And Thor, whilst I think he played a good broken character, I think Peter has played a broken character way better. This Peter B. Parker was not broken like the other Peters were by him killing his wife Mary Jane with his radioactive semen, or his losing a leg in an ultimate battle. He just got broken by the words, with great power comes great responsibility. Words that once defined and once made him a hero, but then they broke him into pieces, and it was saddening for him. But he rose back up as a hero and became a good person, because that is who he is, a good person. In the end, he always will be. Nonetheless, I think he's an amazing movie, and I think the characters were handled so well. And I think that this movie really heavily influenced the Miles Morales game, where they took the great parts of the Miles from the Into Spider-Verse film, like his beatbox background and all that, and merged it with the Miles Morales of the video games, with his overconfident and over his head self from the comics, and the intelligent thing from the video games, and merged it into one character and made him the ultimate Miles on the video games, thanks to the help of the Into the Spider-Verse movie. Also in the game, Miles Morales, he does indeed get retconned to be in Brooklyn Visions instead of Midtown High. So yeah, I think that was really well done too. Nonetheless, coming in at number 2 is a shocking one for me personally, is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now this is the ultimate Spider-Man movie, and I think it will never lose that title. It does what it needs to do. I do think it has its issues. Not every great movie will have its issues. Like, one issue I do say is the 2 hours and 30 minutes does definitely weaken down some partial areas, and I think it really weakens down parts of the film, like how they don't really know how to handle all these characters stored within the film. I don't think the comedy in the first half of it is forced. I think it's way better than Infinity War and Endgame in any way. As a Spider-Man fan, I loved it way more than Endgame and Infinity War. Like, I already loved Infinity War and Endgame, but I love No Way Home way more than Endgame. And Not because it only had Raimi's version of Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew's Spider-Man. It's because it really told a finishing story for Tom. It really gave these actors a great performance. This was their best performance yet. And I really think, like how it was for Tobey Maguire when he did the second Spider-Man, gave his greatest performance. For Andrew, he gave his best performance in The Amazing Spider-Man. And for Tom, he gave his best performance in this movie. And in him, finally, we get a trilogy that ends on a good note. Not one that ends on a disappointing note with no sequel, with a sequel that was supposed to be made, or one that's incomplete. We get a completed story. And that satisfies any Spider-Man fan. And it finally shows that a lot of fans who were fans of Tom Holland's will finally know who the predecessors are. Because this was an ultimate movie for fans who grew up with Tobey, Andrew. Now, you may think that I grew up with the Andrew films. I did not grow up with Andrew films at all. I grew up with Tobey's films. I watched the movies in 2010 when I was 3 years old, and they're pretty much the reason why I like superheroes. My mom would always clean around the house, and sometimes she'll pop on a movie in the background or to watch. She chose Spider-Man 2002. And when I was a kid, I saw him get bit by a spider. I saw his body change. I saw him crawl on that wall, and that defined my childhood for the rest of my life. It defined my liking for superheroes. It triggered my passion into liking these people who could do the most impossible thing. That energized the imagination of a 3-year-old Nico. That energized my passion. And it's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons why I love superheroes, why I love movies. And I think that was a major reason. It's always going to be a childhood fan favorite thing. I will always love Spider-Man. I will always love Batman. I will always love any hero. I love Spider-Man because he's relatable. I love Spider-Man because he's a hero. But that doesn't mean it compromises my liking for Batman. No, not Superman, not any of them. Not Transformers, not any of that. I like all those, just like I like this one. Spider-Man will always be dear to my heart, and this movie really does that well. It runs home a 19-year story. It does what Spider-Man 1 did. It will one day become a timeless story. And I love that they don't really have to expand on the characters or the villains, but I do love how they really just make a unique story. They have one that the characters serve the story, the main characters serve the story, and how they bring back the Raimi and Webb incarnations of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man from both Sam Raimi's trilogy and Mark Webb's duology, and really enhance on their characters is really happy, and I'm very, very happy. I do agree the CGI is a bit and I do believe it did the CGI was a bit at the start. They did overload in some aspects, but I think they let John Watts go all out with the high budget they gave him. But obviously, due to COVID restrictions, it got them limited. But it's now become the 6th highest grossing movie of all time. 6th. No other Spider movies have been able to hit that mark, and they got 6th highest grossing movie. 6th. And it became the highest grossing Spider-Man movie and the first ever one to breach $1 billion, with the second highest grossing film being Far From Home and the third being Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man No Way Home earned its mark as the greatest Spider-Man movie. And anybody who doesn't really like it, who's fussy with it, you're just fussy. I get it has its issues. But not liking it at all just shows you're fussy. It brings back Alfred Molina. It brings back Willem Dafoe. It brings back Thomas Hayden Church. It brings back Rhys Ifans. It brings back Jamie Foxx. Yeah, I didn't get introduced to Spider-Man via the Andrew films, but I did still grow up with those movies. I grew up with Tobey's films. I grew up with Andrew's movies. I invested my time into those, and I grew up with both those franchises, including the Holland films. So seeing those actors all be on screen, as a Tobey fan, I was happy to see him. That now, 14 years later, he was now back in the suit. So that was really, really awesome to see that. I still think it's a great movie, and it'll always be a great movie. And I think it has a greatness to it. It's a great movie, and I don't think any Spider-Man movie will ever beat it. And a lot of people ask, can you beat this? What's the point in trying to beat it? Not every Spider-Man movie has to beat itself. I mean, look at the past movies after Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3 never beat its predecessors. Amazing Spider-Man never beat its predecessors, nor did Amazing Spider-Man 2. Homecoming never really beat its predecessors. It beat some of its predecessors, but not fully on. This one beats all of its predecessors in a lot of ways, but it can't be beaten unless you did even a more ultimate one. Like the only way you could beat this one is Across the Spider-Verse, Bronner, not only the returning ones from the first Into the Spider-Verse movie, but the live-action ones, all of them, that being Nicholas Hammond, all of them. All the live-action actors. And the cartoons from the past. That's the only way I can really see that crossover beating it. Or another Into the Spider-Verse. Or another live-action Spider-Verse. It's the only way I can see that being beaten. But besides that, this is the ultimate Spider-Verse movie, and I can't wait for Across the Spider-Verse, which I'm going to see, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But this movie may be the ultimate one, but no other movie will ever be more ultimate than at number one, the ultimate one, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2002. Not because it's 20 years since Spider-Man 2002, because this is a timeless story. Now, please, I love No Way Home. It was the ultimate movie. I think it's I think it's the best Spider-Man movie. It may not be the best to a lot of people, but personally, I think it was. And Spider-Man 1, there's a legacy behind this one. It did a lot of great things as a Spider-Man movie. It brought hope to New York, especially after 9/11 had happened the past year. And like I mentioned in my speech for it, 9/11 happened and really crushed New York spirits. And while this movie helped give a lot of New Yorkers hope, because it showed strength. And I think it's a very timeless story. It tells his origin story of how he gets bit by the spider, how he becomes the hero. You don't need to change it up. You don't need to make Peter cool. It's just him getting bitten by a spider, getting his powers, letting Uncle Ben, entering a wrestling match, being abusive and overconfident with his powers, letting a robber go by, let them kill Uncle Ben. Then after that, going after vengeance, going to avenge his death, becoming the hero, and fighting Green Goblin. It's a classic timeless story, and as just recently watching it again, I still find it a cool story. And that final swing is awesome. Seeing scenes that I remember from a little kid, like him crawling on the walls, him fighting and swinging around the city, especially the final swing scene, the cool final battle from Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 2 did indeed beat it. Many other movies would go on to beat it, but this movie is, in my opinion, one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time. And it was a great movie when it came out then, and it's still a good movie nowadays. And unfortunately, a lot of kids today who were like around my age or younger, or around the age I was at age 3 or 5 when I saw the movie, would probably not really recognize who this guy is and only see him as the oldest Spider-Man. Some other people may introduce him to the McGuires, but a lot of people recently today around my age, around the age I was when I saw the film, 5, 6, even my age, would only know about likely Andrews or Tom, or even Tobey's. But Tobey will always have a mark as in my opinion, my favorite live-action Spider-Man. I think Tom's the best, but I've always loved Tobey because I grew up with his movies. So yeah, nonetheless, that is what I'm going to end the video on, and I think Spider-Man 2002 is indeed the best Spider-Man movie out of this list. Nonetheless, sorry for the long video, but this video actually kind of demanded it. Nonetheless, tell me what you guys think in the comments down below. Did you guys like this video, or do you guys hate it? It can be a thumbs up, or it can be just a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback. Doesn't matter if it's good or negative, positive or bad. It will only help me improve on my future content and videos I make on the channel, okay? Nonetheless, make sure to comment and tell me what you think. Share this video with your family and friends and add it to your favorites if you want to. And yeah, tell me what you guys think. Nonetheless, this is, the ending of I already ended my Spider-Man month, my road to No Way Home and Spider-Man month, but this was the final video I made until the next video where I re-rank all these movies with Across the Spider-Verse. Nonetheless, hope you guys enjoy your days. See you guys, and until the next video I make, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to be proud, make sure to be happy, and make sure to keep talking movies, TV shows, and video games way too much even without me. Start conversations, do all that, and keep the comments positive, okay, people? Nonetheless, see you guys. Until the next time, see ya.